My neighbor presented me with a gift while I was in bed, and you won't believe what unfolded. The afternoon unfolded slowly, draped in a veil of rain, the kind where the world feels somewhat muted. As if the very air is pausing in anticipation. I lay in bed, teetering on the edge of slumber, caught in a gentle ebb and flow of consciousness. The clock on the wall ticked steadily. Its sound resonating in the stillness, almost overwhelming in its clarity. Today was an exception. I typically steer clear of daytime naps, but something about today just felt unique. It was my birthday, yet I wasn't in a particularly festive mood. I hadn't made any significant efforts to celebrate the occasion, no festivities, no elaborate displays of affection. It was simply a serene day, just as I preferred. The room exuded a sense of comfort in its tranquility, nearly too motionless. The thick curtains shut out the majority of the light, enveloping the room in a gentle, subdued radiance. I hadn't even bothered to rise from my bed. The sheets felt cool against my skin, and the pillow offered just the right amount of firmness. I was slowly succumbing to sleep when a gentle knock at the door broke through, almost drowned out by the persistent rhythm of the rain. "Come in," I called out, not really expecting anyone. Certainly not at this hour. The door creaked open, and a figure stepped inside. For a moment, she was a stranger to me. It felt like she had emerged from a long-forgotten recollection and entered my reality, but then the shape of her, the way she held herself, the familiar scent of her perfume, suddenly it all clicked. It was Emma, my neighbor. She'd always been around in some capacity since we were kids. She was merely a few years my junior, and during our formative years, we shared endless hours in each other's company. We dashed through the neighborhood, stirring up mischief, engaging in conversations that danced between significance and triviality, yet, as time passed, we found ourselves growing distant. Not due to any missteps, but rather because that's just how life unfolds. Time transforms everything. Individuals progress and embark on their own journeys, yet what about Emma? She had always been present, hovering at the periphery of my existence. Occasionally, we would cross paths at the grocery store, or I would spot her strolling with her dog near my home. She continued to reside in the same quaint cottage next door, just as she always had. "Hey," she said softly, her voice enveloping me in an unexpected warmth. It felt as though ages had passed since our last conversation, despite the truth that it had merely been a few months. "Hey, Emma," I responded, my voice gravelly from sleep. "What's happening?" She paused briefly, lingering by the entrance. A subtle tension lingered in the atmosphere. An unvoiced sentiment that eluded my understanding. Perhaps she simply hadn't anticipated discovering me in this state, sprawled on the bed, clad only in a worn t-shirt and a pair of jeans that had long lost their significance. She cast her gaze downward, as if caught in a dilemma between staying and departing. With a delicate, nearly bashful smile, she entered, gently shutting the door behind her. "I brought you something," she said, her voice tinged with a hint of anxiety. She clutched something in her hands, encased in unadorned brown paper, secured with twine. Though it was small, the way she held it revealed its significance to her. I sat up in bed, suddenly more alert, a blend of curiosity and confusion swirling within me. "I told you, you really didn't need to get me anything." I attempted to sound nonchalant, but I couldn't tell if I succeeded. "You have provided me with more than sufficient over the years." She arched an eyebrow at me, as if that wasn't exactly what she intended. Her lips curled into a smile. In that moment, I recalled from my childhood, as if she were on the verge of laughing at a secret only she understood. "I understand," she murmured, her voice scarcely rising above a whisper now. But I felt compelled to. "It is something extraordinary." She moved in, perching on the edge of the bed, her knees lightly touching. The texture of the blanket made the room feel more confined now, more intimate. I had always seen Emma as just that, a neighbor, a friend. But now, as I sat so close to her, I observed details I hadn't noticed before. The manner in which her hair cascaded ever so slightly. It fell just right around her shoulders, the way she tucked a stray lock behind her ear when she felt nervous. The softness in her eyes that I hadn't noticed before, there was something more here now, something I wasn't prepared for. I looked down at the little bundle in her palms. "What is it?" I asked, attempting to set aside the odd sensation crawling up my spine. She didn't respond right away, instead offering me a glance that was a mix of playful and unsure. A glimmer of something danced in her eyes, a depth perhaps, or a vulnerability I had yet to recognize. "Open it," she said simply. I took the package from her, running my fingers over the rough paper. It was a fragile creation, tiny yet significant. As I carefully untied the twine and peeled back the paper, a small wooden box revealed itself within. It was simple, nothing extravagant. Yet there was an essence to it that felt intimate. I unwrapped it carefully. Inside lay a simple necklace, featuring a small pendant shaped like a star, its surface adorned with tiny, intricate designs. It was lovely in its straightforwardness. My fingers brushed over it, and I could feel the weight of it in my hand. But there was something more substantial about it than just the metal. "It's beautiful," I murmured, my voice softer than I had meant it to be. I found myself uncertain whether I was referring to the necklace or the gesture itself. She smiled, her eyes softening in response. "I figured you would appreciate it. I recalled you often mentioned your desire for one when we were young ones." I was taken aback that she recalled. It had been years since we discussed matters like that, and yet here she was, resurrecting a long-buried desire from our childhood. It felt profound, like a connection linking our history to the present moment. I struggled to articulate my emotions, so I chose silence instead. Instead, I set the necklace on the nightstand next to me and turned to confront her footy. My heart raced now, though I couldn't quite grasp the reason. Perhaps it was the unexpected nature of it all. Or perhaps it was something deeper. "Thank you," I finally managed. My voice was low as she reached out then, her hand hovering near my face before gently brushing a strand of hair away from my forehead. Her touch was gentle, yet it remained, and something within me constricted at the mere act. And then, without uttering a word, another word, she leaned in. Her lips brushed against my cheek, soft and fleeting, yet it felt as if time paused for just a moment. The world beyond. The rain drumming softly on the glass, the clock ticking rhythmically on the wall. Everything faded, leaving only the warmth of her kiss, and the surprise of it all. When she pulled back, her eyes remained locked on mine, and for a moment, neither of us moved. "Happy birthday," she whispered, and there was an essence in her voice, something unspoken that lingered between us. It was then I realized I hadn't known what gift she had for me, but this was more than I could have ever expected. The room held a lingering warmth, the atmosphere dense with the silence that came after her kiss. I didn't see that coming. I hadn't realized it was something I desired until that precise moment. It wasn't merely the kiss, which had been surprising and tender. It was the silent bond that ignited between us, akin to a spark igniting dry wood, and she lingered instead of pulling away immediately. Neither of us did. For a long time, we simply sat there, both of us a little uncertain, yet somehow, neither of us seemed to want to break the silence. Emma was always different from the others, words eluded me. Yet there was an unmistakable, earthy quality to her presence. Something reliable. In our younger days, her presence was something I always sensed. A constant thread woven into the very fabric of existence, akin to the gentle sunlight of morning, steady yet unobtrusive. But now, as she sits beside me on the edge of the bed, everything feels different. About her appeared to have transformed, altered in a manner I couldn't entirely comprehend. I found myself pondering whether she sensed it as well. This peculiar energy that flowed between us. It was more than just the kiss. It was something profound, something that had been hidden away for ages. Likely since we were both far too young to grasp its significance. She appeared to pause for a moment, casting her gaze down at the necklace, the way I had placed it on the nightstand. As if weighing the decision to say something about it, however, she pivoted back to. Her lips curled into that familiar, half-amused smile. "You look surprised," she said, her voice airy. Yet there was a subtle hint of something deeper lurking beneath. I ran a hand through my hair, attempting to dispel the foggy sensation that had enveloped me. I find myself taken aback. However, not in a negative sense, she let out a gentle laugh, her gaze becoming tender. Excellent. I hoped it wouldn't feel strange or put you in an awkward position. We lingered in silence for a few moments, the atmosphere around us thick with unexpressed thoughts, until I finally found my voice once more. What prompted you to take that action? I inquired. The kiss, I mean. Her eyes flickered for a brief second, and I sensed she was contemplating her response. I don't know, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I believe I've been eager to pursue this for some time now. Perhaps it was longer than I even realized. She glanced down, toying with the sleeve of her sweater. The very one I recalled from last week, when she strolled her dog by my house. A wave of emotion washed over me. Could it truly be that straightforward, or was there something deeper at play? The notion of additional opportunities was a consideration I hadn't entertained. Permitted myself to consider up to this point. You don't need to clarify, I responded, my voice gentler than I had meant it to be. I believe I grasped more than you realize. Silence hung in the air for a moment, and then she turned her gaze back to me, her eyes now more piercing than ever. I sensed her gaze upon me, as if she were measuring something in her thoughts, contemplating whether to delve deeper. Then she exhaled softly and offered a slight smile, the kind that seemed to conceal deeper thoughts. Then it disclosed, perhaps, she spoke softly, there has always been an unspoken connection between us. We were close when we were younger, but I believe it seems we both developed our own interpretations of what that entailed. But what about now? Perhaps it varies. The words hung in the air, evoking a sense of curiosity, perhaps even a beckoning. It was impossible for me to ignore the fact that she had a point. Something had changed, but what was it, and where we were headed from here? I couldn't say, but one thing was clear to me. I wished for this moment to last forever. Not yet, not when the atmosphere surrounding us felt so electric, so vibrant. In her presence, I felt an intensity that was both raw and unrefined. A vulnerability that had eluded me until that moment. And she, Emma, was not fleeing from it. She sat beside me, equally uncertain, equally receptive to whatever might unfold next. I took a deep breath, attempting to collect my thoughts. You know, I mentioned after some time, my voice now softer, I've always been curious about what it might feel like. Not just the kiss, but what it would be like for us now, after all these years. Her eyes softened, the corners of her mouth lifting in a gentle, knowing smile. It's amusing, she remarked, I've pondered that very question. It felt as though a curtain had been drawn back, revealing something that had always existed, but was only now coming into focus. I gazed at her once more, truly taking her in, and for the first time, I realized how much time had slipped away since our childhood days, the transformation she underwent, the delicate nuances in her appearance, the evolution in her demeanor. She had become a woman. And although that reality had always existed, it suddenly felt strikingly evident. For a brief moment, I considered expressing something deeper, perhaps about the future, the past, or what lay ahead. Yet, the words remained elusive. Instead, I found myself engaging in something more straightforward. I extended my hand and grasped hers, softly, almost with hesitation. As if constructing a delicate bridge between two souls who had been unaware of the distance separating them until this moment. Her fingers enveloped mine, warm and reassuring. You have consistently been present, I remarked, nearly as much to myself as to her, even when silence enveloped us, even in moments of uncertainty about our connection. You have consistently been woven into the fabric of my existence. Emma hesitated before responding, yet the firm grip of her hand spoke volumes. She understood, and in that moment something within me, something that had been hidden for a long time, stirred. I found myself uncertain about the significance of this newfound intimacy, this silent bond. Yet I understood that it was something I would have to confront. In that quiet room, her gaze remained unwavering on mine, and for the first time in ages, a profound sense of peace washed over me. A feeling of everything being as it should, even amidst the uncertainty that lingered around us. Perhaps we don't have to understand everything at this moment, she said gently, her voice carrying a hint of newfound assurance. Perhaps we should simply allow it to exist as it is. I nodded, uncertain if I concurred with every statement. Yet sensing the underlying truth within them, there remained an abundance to discover. There is an abundance to explore, but for now, in this moment, I didn't need to have all the answers. I only needed her here, beside me, and maybe that was enough for today. The days that came after Emma's surprising visit had a distinct quality, though I couldn't quite identify the reason at the time. Their house continued to creak with the same familiar sounds, the floorboards groaning beneath my feet, the low hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Yet something had changed in the space between us. The tension hung in the air, yet it wasn't the sort that made one uneasy. It was more akin to a subtle connection. An unvoiced sentiment that neither of us completely recognized yet both experienced profoundly. I started to observe details I had previously overlooked, the way her laughter resonated in my thoughts. How the fragrance of her perfume appeared to linger in the atmosphere long after her departure, and how even the briefest exchanges between us felt electric. Whether we encountered each other at the grocery store or shared casual greetings while caring for our yards, there was an unspoken connection lingering beneath the surface. It transcended the kiss. It encompassed everything that followed, the gentle easing of barriers, the revival of feelings that had lain dormant between us for years. Initially, we chose not to revisit that moment. Neither of us appeared prepared for it, yet it lingered in the spaces we occupied. It was the unacknowledged presence, the truth we both avoided naming, yet even in our silence, a dialogue unfolded. The way Emma's eyes softened when they met mine, the way she lingered a little longer than usual whenever we talked, those quiet gestures spoke volumes. I found myself falling into those moments, letting them fill the gaps between the words we didn't say. I found myself thinking about her more than I had in years, wondering what she was doing, where she was going, what thoughts occupied her mind. And sometimes, just sometimes, I caught myself imagining what it might be like for us, together in a way neither of us had expected. But the thought felt both exhilarating and... It was a moment filled with unease, akin to plunging into uncharted depths. On a Thursday afternoon, nearly a week after her previous visit, I encountered Emma once more. This time, it wasn't in the familiar confines of the store or near the fence. She stood at my doorstep, unexpected. Yet there was an unmistakable quality in her demeanor, an openness, a fragility, that suggested this was no ordinary call. I opened the door, a wave of surprise washing over me. As I took in her presence, hands tucked into the pockets of her coat, her hair tousled from the journey, I sensed the weight of the moment. "Hey," she said. Her voice gentle yet filled with that unmistakable warmth. "Hey, what's up?" I responded, making an effort to maintain a calm tone. I couldn't help but observe her appearance, vibrant and yet, in some way, more sophisticated. She now carried a certain ease, a quiet confidence that had previously eluded her. "I was hoping we could talk," she said, her eyes meeting mine. "About last week." I nodded slowly, stepping aside to allow her entry. I hadn't anticipated her to mention it again, but now that she had, I found myself feeling relieved. The tension between us had been hanging in the air, and I had been anticipating the moment we would finally face it. She entered, her boots softly thudding against the wooden floor. I shut the door softly, and we lingered for a moment, simply gazing at one another. "Do you want something to drink?" I asked, though it felt like a pointless question in the face of everything unspoken between us. "No, I'm okay," she replied, her gaze steady. I have been reflecting on the events that transpired. And I think I owe it to us to say what's on my mind." I could see the sincerity in her eyes, the careful way she chose her words. She was treading lightly, just as I had been, both of us trying to navigate the delicate space we had stumbled into. "I don't know what it means, what we're doing, or where we're going with this," she began, her voice vulnerable yet stronger than I'd expected. "But I do know that I don't want to ignore it. I don't want to pretend like things haven't changed between us. I swallowed, the weight of her words sinking into me. I could feel the same uncertainty in my chest, the same stirring desire to acknowledge what was happening between us without fully understanding it. Neither do I said, my voice barely above a whisper. It feels different. And I can't quite put it into words. But I wish for it to stay. Her eyes softened, a gentle smile playing at the corners of her mouth. I wish for it to stay, too. However, I also prefer not to hurry into any decisions. I want us to take our time with this. To truly grasp what it is before we take any actions we could regret. I nodded, sensing the weight of her words resonate within me, the urgency I once felt to define this, whatever it was between us. Was gradually yielding to a serene patience, and understanding that sometimes, things require time. At times, you must allow them to reveal themselves in their own manner. She moved a bit closer then. Just enough to bridge the distance between us, yet not so much as to feel overpowering. It felt like we were allowing one another the freedom to breathe, to truly understand the path we were taking. I'm not asking for anything, she continued, her voice now a gentle whisper, as if confiding a secret. I'm just saying. I wish to hold on to whatever this is. I don't want to let it slip away because we're too afraid to admit it. Her words tightened my heart, a rush of emotion flooding through me. I had been fearful. Fearful of what could unfold if we crossed that boundary, if we surrendered to whatever this bond between us genuinely was. Yet, listening to her voice the truth, to her recognize the fear and the potential, transformed it into something less intimidating, more akin to a journey we could navigate side by side. I don't want to lose it either, I said, finally allowing myself to be vulnerable. But I don't want to rush things either. We can savor the moment. Let's solve this, whatever this is. She smiled then. The smile that always had a way of making everything seem more achievable. As she extended her hand, resting it softly on mine, a wave of tranquility washed over me. It felt as though we were finally, after so many years, recognizing that this, whatever it may be, was indeed real, and that we could journey through it side by side. I'm glad you said that, she whispered. I think we're both ready to figure it out. And just like that, the tension that had been hanging between us, that delicate uncertainty, eased. It wasn't absent, not completely. But it no longer seemed like a barrier. It seemed like a journey we were both eager to embark on together, step by step, at our own rhythm. I was uncertain about what lay ahead. I was uncertain about the direction this would take. In that moment, I realized we were no longer two individuals trapped in the past, unsure of what had shifted. We were just two individuals, side by side, prepared to confront whatever lay ahead, and perhaps that was sufficient for the moment.